Welcome to the Dork Forest. Jackie and her pals will never bore us. Shameless confessions
about our obsession
will make us laugh and smile. So let's explore the Dork Forest and dork out for a while.
Brian Kiley, intro. Hi, it's Jackie Cation. Welcome to the Dork Forest. You know the websites, JackieCation.com, DorkForest.com, TheDorkForest.com. Also all over allthingscomedy.com. There are 30 or 50 podcasts. If you need a new podcast, if you go to allthingscomedy.com and look at their selection, the Dork Forest is there, but also a gajillion others, like Mike Olson from last episode, and Aaron Foley, and Tom Papa, and Bill Burr, and Al Madrigal. There's just a bunch of them. Ari Shafir, Baron Vaughn. I could keep going. Let's not. The credits. Patrick Brady, gonna fix this audio once, and it's a great thing that he does that, and I totally appreciate that. Vilmos fixes my website, Jackie Cation. He keeps it all updated. With the new Conan set, you can watch me. I did Conan a couple of weeks ago, maybe a month ago. And you can watch me in a shirt that I got, that I borrowed from when I did the Marc Maron TV show. I got to act on the Marc Maron TV show on IFC, and that's going to air in probably 6 months, but whatever. I got to borrow that shirt and those pants, and I wore them on the Conan O'Brien show, and then I gave them back. Okay, so that is all on JackieCation.com. DorkForest.com, of course, and Jackie Cation both have a donation button. JackieCation.com has the Amazon banner that you can order from Amazon, and I get a little kickback. Doesn't cost you extra. I appreciate that. You can order Ranger of the Dork Forest and Dork Forest related items, plus all my CDs and DVDs. Got my current new album, Top 10 Comedy Albums Specials of the Year on Vulture.com. This will make an excellent Horcrux, is available via CD or DVD on JackieCation.com on the merch page, where you can also get t-shirts and hoodies. I have one of every size of zip-hooded sweatshirt in stock for some reason, so it wouldn't be a pre-order if you want to get it. Granted, we're going into spring, but if you want a zip hoodie, you can order it there too. Now, did I do all the credits? I don't think I did. I don't think I mentioned Mike Rickberg composing and singing the intro song. He's going to sing his lyrics to the Mexican Hat Dance at the end of the program. And this week's advertising support person is Jenny Bergman, one of the owners of West Side Kids, a toy store in the Upper West Side in New York City. So if you're ever on 84th in Amsterdam and you need a cool toy, go into West Side Kids because it's super fun. It's a great toy store. Now, what else should I talk about? Stand-up comedy. I'm in LA for a couple of weeks. It's been great. Last weekend we went and visited my dad. This weekend we're going to go visit Andy's mom's. But other than that, I'm just doing sets around stand-up wise. I think I'm in Indio on March 18th, which is tomorrow, 2015, with Denny Johnston. Indio doing a stand-up show. Indio being near Palm Springs. How weird is that? Wow, this is getting long. Anyway, and then I'm doing a show with Andy Kindler at Meltdown on the 20th. All right. This has been the longest intro ever. Let's get into the show. It's a great one. Brian Kiley, you guys. Bye. See you soon. Hey, it's Jackie Cation. I'm in my living room with Brian Kiley. We've been trying to make this happen. Welcome to the program, Brian Kiley.
Thanks for having me.
Yes. Yeah. Welcome to the program. That's kind of very professional, isn't it?
It is.
I found myself saying it in the last couple of years. I'm like, what are you doing? But whatever.
No, sounds good.
It's a real thing.
Seemed very natural.
Yes. Now, Brian Kiley, you are at Kiley Noodles on the Twitter.
On Twitter, yes.
Instagram too, or?
You know what? I theoretically am on Instagram, but I don't know if I've ever actually. I think I might have Instagram once.
Fair enough. And then BrianKiley.com, Kiley. Is that Irish?
I'm afraid it is. I don't know why I'm saying I'm afraid it is. Yes.
Kiley? That might sound a little Irish. So you stand-up comedy. I don't know why I'd choose to eat a dried apricot right before.
Those are so tasty, though.
That's
aren't
a beautiful
they?
moment.
I love them.
And so Brian Kiley does stand-up comedy. You write for Conan. You are the father of a young, hopeful family.
I am. I've got 2 teenagers. So
There you go.
So you can imagine what I've been through.
Exactly. And then in your copious amounts of free time, you've written a fiction novel.
I did.
You're my hero. I want to grow up and be you.
Well, thank you.
Brian Kiley, The Astounding Misadventures of Rory Collins is a fiction novel.
It is indeed.
It's, is this contemporary?
It takes place in the 80s.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So,
Yeah.
in a lifetime
In a
of
lifetime.
everyone but your children.
Yes.
And so so we'll talk more about all of that stuff later,
Sure.
but people should check out all of your various
Well, thanks.
tasks and things that you do. You heard it dork out briefly about presidential biographies.
Sure.
Yeah. So you like to read nonfiction presidential biographies.
I do. I mean, I do read like I just finished that Woodrow Wilson one, that A. Scott Berg, which is like 750 pages, and
Right.
you have to slug it out with them. These are a long. Do you know what I mean? Like
dense.
I felt like I had a stroke by the end, you know, and that my wife. Well, except that my wife wouldn't come in and do all my work for me. But you get the idea.
You do.
But so after I slug through one of those, then I'll read a quick novel to cleanse the palate.
Oh, yeah, yeah. You need a sorbet of some sort.
Exactly. So that's what I do tend to do.
Because it's you don't read them linear, right? I mean, they don't come out in order. Like, hey, George Washington's, you know.
Oh no, so yeah, I'm not doing like George Washington and John Adams and so on. Yeah. No, I don't do that.
Yeah, that's probably for the best because there's better ones and worse ones, right?
Yes. Well, that's the thing is it's funny because my wife just told me about her friend who's reading a biography of each president, and she's up to McKinley.
Okay.
And I don't know that I want to read a 500-page book about Millard Fillmore. Do you know what I mean?
Right. Unless you have some new insight into Millard Fillmore.
I mean, I would rather read several books about Teddy Roosevelt than a giant book about Millard Fillmore or Zachary Taylor or something.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I do know what you mean.
So I tend to read my favorite guys over and over.
Okay.
And
just sort of get a new perspective on them, or?
Yeah. And also, you know what? As I get older, I'm in my early 90s. I find that
looking good.
I have to keep, thank you. I have to keep reinforcing my knowledge. Otherwise it goes away.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean?
Oh, the Dork Forest is entirely, an exercise in telling me something I already know. It's fantastic. I'm like, I vaguely know that.
But it's also the thing of, that's right. You know, where you go,
Yeah.
you know, where I'm not sure I could have said it coming in, but now that you say it, it's registering in my mind that I've heard that before.
Right. That is actual information I have access to. But now here's my, so you have favorite presidents, right?
I do. Yeah.
And sometimes it's not their politics that makes me their favorite. Though that's not true. It's usually their politics that make me their favorite. Though I do like Andrew Jackson, and he was a nightmare.
Yes. I have to say it's actually, it's often not their politics. It's more,
their personality.
Yes. I have to say.
Which sounds like comedy, because I hang out with many comics that are not great people, but they're very funny.
Yes, I think I prefer the characters.
Yeah.
Because like Harry Truman, I think is great. And I've read the Giant McCullough one, and I've read a couple others. But I've only read, say, maybe 3 of him. Okay. Now Nixon, bad guy. I've probably read 12 or 15 biographies of him, because I'm more like Harry Truman is just a normal guy, like a real American salt of the earth guy.
Right.
Where
who
Nixon
happened to become president.
Yes.
That's so weird.
It's true. And it's a guy didn't even go to college.
Really?
Yes. And his middle name is just S.
Harry S. Truman? His middle name is the letter S.
It doesn't stand for anything.
Did he do that?
No. His parents, yes.
Oh,
and I believe there's no period. It's just S.
That's weird.
Yes. So, but I love the guy, but I'm more interested in some of the offbeat personalities. Because when you read stuff over and over, like there are certain people you go, well, who would do that? Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Like Lyndon Johnson is like that.
Okay.
And Richard Nixon is like that. And to me, it's almost like if you watch the show The Office.
Okay.
Jim is a normal guy. Dwight is like, what? Do you know what I mean? And Michael Scott is like, what? So I'm more interested, and they're not as good a guy as Jim.
Yep.
But I'm more interested in those sort of I enjoy reading the fact that they're real life characters like that. Do you know what I mean?
That wasn't just somebody wrote that character. That is a person that walked among us.
Yes.
Who had access to.
Became the leader of the free world.
Right.
This insane person had the button.
So,
yes.
So you've read a dozen Nixon books.
Yeah.
And you've read how many LBJ books?
Well, I've probably read about 8 or 9 LBJ, although they're giant tomes.
They're huge.
Yes.
I accidentally got sucked into a New Yorker excerpt of one of LBJ's biographies. And I started reading it. I was like, well, this is fascinating.
Is this Caro?
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
But it was probably 15 years ago. And so it was probably written in the 90s or maybe even the late 80s.
Sure.
And it was a 35-page New Yorker print excerpt and so I was furious by the end of it. I was like, I wanted to know this, and I'm happy that I know this, but I didn't want to read that.
Yes.
Because it's super dense.
Yes.
But they are fascinating. Like, what makes an LBJ guy become president? Do you remember?
Sure. Well, I think I mean, he's a guy, I think some of it just stems from like a deep-seated insecurity. And, with him.
Right.
And I think his dad was like a failed politician.
Okay.
And became, I think he was like in the state legislature for a couple of terms.
Okay.
But his business failed and he was kicked out of, the house there or whatever.
Okay.
The state, and
not his family's home. You're talking the state legislature.
The state legislature.
Okay.
And he was kind of a failure. And LBJ was very close to his mother. And I think that being that sort of a, not the kid with the nice stuff. And, he took a trip to Washington, D.C. with his friends and he wore the same clothes every day and had his little suitcase. And they were like, why doesn't he change his clothes ever or whatever?
Right.
The suitcase blew up in one day and he just had a hat inside the suitcase.
Oof.
That was it.
That was it?
That was it. He was a poor guy. And then when he became, he went to San Marcos Teachers College.
Okay.
And
is that in Texas?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And became a teacher and he taught very poor, mostly Mexican kids, Mexican American kids,
immigrant kids.
Immigrant kids.
Yeah.
And when they would act up and he was, 22 or something, he'd be like, what are you doing? Don't you know your teacher's going to be the president of the United States someday?
He literally said that.
Yes. He would say that to his students.
Oh, that is some gutsy stuff right there. And yet it's the Jim Carrey writing himself a check for $1 million.
Yes, it is that. And it's funny though. What about all the people, all the Jim, the Joe Schmo that wrote himself $1 million
that didn't make it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because those guys exist as well.
We joke about that with Conan because, Conan went to Harvard.
Yeah.
And he would get drunk with these super brilliant, ambitious guys.
Right.
And he said to us one day that when he was in college, 7 different guys said to him, I'm going to be president someday. Sometimes they were drunk, but that was it, you know what I mean? And we always laughed that only 4 of them made it,
Yeah, those other 3 guys, total losers.
Total losers. Became Secretary of State. That's as far as I got.
That's as far as I got. One guy's like a CEO of a bank. What's that going to do for him? And he's the puppet master.
Yes. So he was this incredibly ambitious guy.
Yeah.
And when he became a congressman, he met FDR.
Okay.
And FDR said, oh, this guy's going to be president someday.
Oh, my gosh.
So whatever that thing that FDR had that
made him say, I'm going to be president one day.
Yes, he goes, oh, he's got that computer chip that I have. He's got that too.
Oh, weird.
Yes.
That's the spookiest story in the world.
Oh, thank you. So FDR even recognized that in LBJ, which I thought was interesting.
Holy smokes. Because I saw the Ken Burns thing, and I didn't get to see all of it because you have
a life and you have to go out and earn a living.
I think 16 hours. I think it was 8 episodes or 10 hours.
Yeah.
10 episodes. And I'm actually sad that I missed some of it, just because. But FDR did say that he was going to be president.
Yes.
Out loud to people that he worked with in a shitty day job, and you're like, I don't know. I don't have.
Right. Well, I don't have that chutzpah or whatever.
Right.
I don't have that I mean, some of it is a brashness or
Yeah.
something. Do you know what I mean? Because I actually met a young comic a couple of years ago who introduced himself to me and said, I have ambitions of being a late night talk show host.
Okay.
And I thought, good for you. Good
I
luck.
hope. Good luck. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Whereas, you know, we all have as comics, it's like we got into this hoping, I hope this happens.
I hope somebody cares one day and hands me
exactly.
a giant bar of
But I have never said that. And also.
And who is that young man a talk show host at this time?
No.
Okay.
So
all right.
he could be one of the, I mean, who knows? Maybe.
It could be coming.
It could become it.
Yeah.
Or he could be another one of those guys that wrote themselves the $1 million check that
doesn't cash.
Yeah.
And I don't know. You wonder about somebody with that kind of ambition. Like, you want to be president. Like, LBG's dad wants to be president or wants to be in politics and isn't successful. He's the guy that wrote the check and doesn't cash it. Does that burn?
I think that burn, and I think that
inspires the next.
I think that does. I think that sort of humiliation. I think his father's humiliation. I think he never got over that. I would say. Right.
What is like the equivalent of him growing up? I went to I think I must have done a show in a town that he taught or something, because there was an LBJ museum that I went to, and there were pictures of him on those stands.
Sure.
Shouting to the peoples. And, but when did he start running for office? I mean,
well, he was a young guy, and what's interesting was when he became a congressman, he said, when the war starts, because World War II was already brewing, and if we got in the war, that he was going to join up. So the war started, and he didn't join up right away. People were like, hey, remember? So he kind of was like, So he went, and he went as an advisor or something. And he went there, and he went on one mission. We got on the plane.
Yeah.
And he went, and they were in combat, and they were shot at and whatever. But he's just standing there. He doesn't know how to do anything. He's not operating.
An advisor.
He's an advisor. He's not flying the plane. He's not the tail gunner. I think he ended up just being like a government consultant or something.
Right.
But what was interesting was he talked about that in his speeches from then on about, when I was in the war and so on. And people are like, well, do you know what I mean? But he also did this thing of, that's not even the worst part. He would do this thing of, touring, he'd go to this thing, to this event and speak, and then he'd, drive. It's almost like doing gigs. You drive into the next gig, whatever. He would have somebody introduce him. He almost always made sure the person was a war hero, preferably missing limbs.
Oh, nice.
Yes.
Nice.
Because he wanted that connection he wanted that guy up there with the missing arm, the missing legs, whatever, and be like, we are brothers. Like, we were brothers in arms.
Right. Because we both saw the same action.
Yes.
Me and that guy.
Me and that guy. And then when someone with all
that'll make you like him less.
Yes. And when someone with all his limbs introduced him, he was furious. He's like, I told you to have that guy with the whipper.
We could get that guy's foot knocked off.
Yes. And, I mean, it was so shameless.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're like, that's what I love about LBJ. It's like, well, who would do that? Do you know what I mean? But he would call him and go, make sure that guy with the missing leg.
Without even blushing. It's what I saw in that Ken Burns documentary about Teddy Roosevelt. That guy was a psychopath. That guy, I mean, we're lucky he had like a noblesse oblige kind of like an empathetic heart for the little guy.
That's true.
Because he wanted to be God.
Yes.
And, I think that there's some of that. Like, I don't know. I mean, I haven't read any of these, the biographies, but that when Ken Burns said that he was walking among the dead at San Juan Hill, and he says to his buddy, this is so much more fun than hunting. It just made you want to go, hey, crazy man.
Yes.
Please.
Right.
Inside your head voice. Holy shit.
Yes. Well, also, I do think when his son was actually killed in World War I,
right,
that it was like, oh, shit.
People are killed.
This isn't the game here, or whatever.
Yeah.
Do you know? And it's like,
and there were pictures of that.
Yes.
Of his son, because his plane got shot down, and they were playing the, and then his other sons went into World War II.
Right. And one was killed. One was actually killed shortly after D-Day. Yeah, he was involved in D-Day.
Wow.
His other son, one of his sons, but And also, my favorite Teddy Roosevelt story is, so after he's president, he goes on this trip to the Amazon. They're going to explore this part of the Amazon River that had never been explored, like really in the jungle or whatever. And while he's there,
it's 1920.
No,
it's before the war.
It's before the war.
So it's got to be 1910 or something. 1911.
Yeah, somewhere around there. Probably 1913 or something. Okay. He gets malaria, and he in the middle of the jungle.
Wow.
And he's with one of his sons and just a couple other people. He's like, "Go on without me," whatever. It's like, no.
What? It's like, I'll sleep it out. Yeah. I'll catch up with you guys.
Yeah, you know what? Look, I'll just die here. You guys go ahead.
Yeah, you guys keep
I'm the most famous person in the world. You just leave me here.
Right. No one will ever.
They won't mind.
They won't mind. No one will ever judge you for that.
Yes, absolutely.
Their self-absorption themselves have to, at the very least, be thinking, "Oh my God, that story gets out.
Yes.
It's worse than the honor party."
They're like, no, I'm sorry.
We're not leaving
We really can't actually do that. But thanks.
Right. And the one guy's like, "Dad, you're my dad. I'm certainly not going to let you die alone in the middle of the Amazon."
If they come out, where's the president? Well, he died. We just
lost
him.
Here's his dog tags.
So that, this is where my family is like, gets annoyed. Like, they're puzzled by me because, like, my daughter loves certain sitcoms and I'll watch them with her.
Sure.
And I never laugh. Even though I think certain things are funny, I haven't laughed since like 1968. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
So we'll watch something and I never laugh. And she's like, "You're not laughing." And it's like, no, it's good.
No, it's good, honey. I love it.
But I will be reading a history book and laugh out loud.
Right.
Because I'll see something like that where it's like, wait, they can't leave them. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's the kind of thing
that does cracks
me up.
I was reading
dark. Yes. I was reading one. It was actually a Ben Franklin biography, but they were talking about the Montgolfier brothers.
Nope.
Who invented the hot air balloons.
Okay.
These two brothers.
French dudes,
like 1770s.
Okay.
They invent the hot air balloon.
Oh, wow.
So first, they don't want to send somebody up in it or whatever. So first they just send up like an empty balloon. Like a balloon with a basket, but nothing or whatever.
Oh, they're like, okay.
Yeah, let's just see how this goes.
Yeah.
So it drifts off and it goes probably about 30 miles away or whatever.
Okay.
But eventually it runs out of air and it floats. Villagers 30 miles away see this thing, freak out. They chase it, and when it finally lands, they beat it with sticks.
They beat it to death.
Yes.
Excellent.
This empty hot air balloon. Right. That's the kind of thing. I'm reading that. I'm doubled over.
That's where the comedy lies for you.
Yes.
You're just like historical people being freaked out by something new.
Somebody saying funny lines in a sitcom.
Not as much.
Not really interesting.
You can sit back and go, "Oh, that's a good line."
Yes. Absolutely, I can. Yes.
I saw a comic, a comic strip, like just a, a one-off, like the Family Circus.
Sure.
No, not except for a horrible example.
But something good.
Yeah. And it was a Sega Genesis talking to a Nintendo machine, and then there was an Atari machine, and the Nintendo scene says, "You remember when we were the number one places in game consoles in the world?" And the Sega goes, "Yep," and the Atari goes, "I have no memory." See,
nice.
That's funny. That's clever. A great line.
Very clever. Yes,
like,
great joke.
And that made you laugh against your will. And because I expect nothing from a comic.
Yes, that's true.
Which is another thing that'll make me laugh. Where I'm like, oh, well, I didn't expect that to be funny at all.
Yes,
what just happened?
That's true. And that's that element of surprise which you get in a history book because they're just telling history.
Right. Because and how is there a good Ben Franklin? Because I kind of love the idea of Ben Franklin because he seems like just an old lech.
That stuff is pretty cool. Yeah, this Walter Isaacson has a good one about him.
About him,
mm-hmm.
And it's all consensual, right? As far as the biographers, maybe some emotional blackmail, but
it's
on
consensual.
the whole,
but he has an illegitimate kid, for example.
Right, sure, mistresses and stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. Fair enough.
So that stuff's good. Absolutely.
Is there a good one for Jefferson? Have you read a Jefferson one?
It's funny. I read this one by this woman, Fawn Brody, and I must have read this 25 years ago or something. And it was talking about him fathering children with his slaves and being
right.
So I just, whatever. So
You're like, okay, there's the facts.
Yeah. So then when it came out a few years ago, they go, oh.
Huge reveal.
Huge reveal. I was like, what are you talking about? Didn't everyone know this? This woman had this book 20 years ago, which I didn't realize I didn't know it was controversial. I just thought it was.
Oh, it's like, no, people were assholes.
Yes.
I don't think you.
Yes. Yeah. And I took her at her word, and it turned out she was right. But I guess it wasn't until maybe 10 years ago or less that they did these DNA tests and were like,
of the descendants.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So she had said, oh, these are the facts.
Yes.
But everyone was like, don't be ridiculous.
Yes. Which I didn't know people were saying that. But it turns out. Yeah.
Well, and plus the weird thing about reading those obscure history books is that you have access to information that no one else,
right?
Unless Ken Burns does an article, does a television show about it, it's not going to go mass.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
What about Andrew Jackson? Did you read any Andrew Jackson?
Yes, there's one by, I think it's Brantz, H.W. Brantz, something like that.
Okay.
He's pretty great.
Yeah, he's just a mess.
Yes.
Of a guy.
Yes.
And
it seems like a psycho guy, absolutely.
Right.
Like a guy wound too tight. And it is interesting. It's one thing interesting I found about history is that history actually changes. And people think it doesn't change, but it does change because the way you look at things change. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Well, Alexander the Great.
Okay.
This great conqueror.
Yeah.
He takes his guys, they invade other countries, take over these other countries. He's great.
Yeah. And he is revered for it.
Right.
Yeah.
So after Hitler comes around, people start going, oh, hey, maybe these guys that go around conquering these other countries, maybe they're
great.
Maybe they aren't great. Do you know what I mean?
Okay.
So Alexander the Great, he hasn't changed in a couple thousand years.
Right.
However, as we look back and we go, well, wait a minute, maybe that's not that good a thing.
Right. Well, someone was explaining to me, I think it was Andy, he said, that the ISIS guys are very much old school conquerors. Because they come into town and they set up schools and governments and they want to take over, they want to rule. But they are Genghis Khan. And they're like, no, we're your rulers now, and we're going to cut off your heads and you're going to keep it together.
Yeah.
And it's horrible because we don't do it that way anymore.
Yes.
That's not how we conquer now.
I mean, there are
McDonald's.
Absolutely. There are some better conquerors than others. I mean, I do think Alexander the Great, in fairness to him.
Let's be fair to Alexander the Great.
Right. I mean, at least they're actually bringing culture and literacy and, do you know what I mean?
No,
the people actually, not the victims.
Right. Not the ones who died.
Not the ones who died, but the ones who didn't.
The following generation.
The following generation, it may be a better life.
Right. It's the advancement of humanity kind of thing.
Well, I guess that's the argument. That's the argument. It's a slippery slope because then you could say, oh, so it was okay to kill the Indians or whatever. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
But.
Well, that was the argument, wasn't it? It was like we're gonna show the Indians the alphabet, and it's gonna be amazing.
Yes, and I don't think ISIS is making it better for anybody.
No,
do you know what I mean?
Because everybody has cable already. We don't need to.
Yes, we're good. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, but I do think
I do not support ISIS. Let me say that out loud for the Rangers of the Dork Forest.
All I'm saying about Andrew Jackson was in the old biographies, and not even that long ago. Someone being a great Indian fighter.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, I grew up in the 60s, mostly the 70s, but a little bit in the 60s, some in the 60s. There was some leftover books that you would find in the library. And it would talk about some of these guys, the
great Indian
fighters. And then I think they were like, well, let's get these books out of here. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
As the late 60s and early 70s came around, people were like, well, wait a minute. Do you know what I mean?
Well, I think I had those, it was different. It wasn't, they were like, there was like, I read all the Louis L'Amour novels in junior high.
Reagan was a big fan of those. Do you know that?
Yeah. Sure. That's the only thing Ronald Reagan and I have in common. And the entertainment industry.
And you nap sometimes.
I do nap.
Okay.
Oh, I love a nap.
Right.
Did he nap?
Oh, he's a big napper.
Oh, he's a big napper. And, but the ones that they kind of started getting rid of when I was in 3rd and 4th grade were the gunning down of the buffalo. It wasn't the gunning down. It was because all of the ones, the Indian fighter ones, they were half friends with the Indians, and then there'd be a bad guy Indian. You're like, well, we got to go kill an Indian. And so, I mean, that was the Indian fighter ones I read when I was a kid. I think we're about the same age, so it's weird but the buffalo ones where they were like, no, we're going to kill all the buffalo and we're going to do it from a moving train. And look, I got 30 of them.
Yeah.
No, I don't need 30 of them. I'm just going to leave them. And, the Indians might. And so they were like, yeah, let's get rid of those. So.
Right. That's the kind of thing where like Andrew Jackson's on the $20 bill.
Right.
If they were deciding now, hey, who should we put on the $20 bill?
Yeah.
I think this day and age, they wouldn't go, let's kill the guy. Let's get the guy who killed the Indians.
The Trail of Tears guys.
Yes,
let's get that guy.
Let's get the Trail of Tears guy. He moved the Cherokees all the way, whatever. Women and children.
Yeah. 100 million millions of people died.
Yes.
Not good.
Not good.
Yeah.
So even though it was years after he died, they put him on the $20 bill, history changed. And I mean, he's still there, but I could see eventually the people going, let's get this guy out of here.
Let's get someone without a wig on. Let's go real hair on the bill.
Somebody, new rule. If you've been in a duel, you can't be on a bill.
Yes.
Something like that.
Right. Have you, I don't, if you have good anecdotes about Andrew Jackson, I don't want to.
No, I don't.
Okay. Let me ask about Regan then. Have you read Regan biographies?
I have. I read that controversial one and I feel bad about it.
Why? Why was it controversial?
Because
who wrote
this guy, Edmund Morris, who is a fantastic historian.
Okay.
And he gets picked, when they pick one guy.
Oh, do they?
Yes.
The family does?
The family does. The president
interesting.
picks one guy and he's going to be his biographer. And they give him, here's all your presidential papers. You get access to all the stuff that nobody else has. It's private letters or,
interesting.
I mean, these days it would be emails, but this is private email, but it's private correspondence. It's whatever. It's your diary, possibly. It's whatever. Do you know what I mean?
Wow.
So,
but you have to sign like a non-disclosure, obviously.
Well,
right?
I mean,
or is it just a gentleman's agreement where
I don't know. I don't know what they reveal, what they're allowed to reveal, or what not. Do you know what I mean?
Okay.
But that's they look at a bunch of historians and go, this guy's, and this Edmund Morris had wrote these great Teddy Roosevelt biographies.
Okay.
So they pick him, and
because Reagan thinks he's Roosevelt.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And so he loves this historian, and so do I. He's great.
Yeah.
And he's a nice man. And anyway, he decided to write it with a fictional narrator.
Oh, weird.
Yes. So there's a character in the book who doesn't really exist, but is Reagan's friend.
Okay.
And he'll be like, I was in college and blah, blah, blah. And I see this strapping young fellow. And I said, who's that? And they said, well, that's Ronald Reagan. And, this is when I first met him, So he would tell these things that never happened from the point of view of somebody, a character who doesn't really exist.
Yeah.
Yes. And so everyone's waiting.
And that was his choice. That was not Reagan's choice.
No, that was his choice. And it was.
But once published.
And so people are, I can't wait till this Reagan biography comes out because this guy, this great historian wrote this book.
Right.
And he goes, and here you go. And everyone went, what the fuck are you doing? Do you know what I mean?
We look like morons.
Yes.
Like egomaniacal.
And in the world of historians.
Yes.
Like it is the battle of Little Big Horn, whatever it is. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
It's the biggest debacle.
Oh, in the world of biographies?
In the world of biographies.
Okay, what is the name of that author?
It's Edmund Morris. The book is called Dutch. Because Reagan's nickname was Dutch.
Okay.
Which is actually true.
Okay. Well, and I'm sure many things were true.
Yes.
But this sort of literary choice of Edmund Morris.
Absolutely. And you'd be reading it and he'd be talking about Reagan for 20 pages.
Right.
And there'd be like Reagan.
Fun facts and anecdotes.
It's just, normal biography stuff,
Right.
But then he'd be like, and I said goodbye to Reagan because I was interested in Gloria. She had gams up to. What are you talking about?
You just pulled me out of the book.
You pulled me out of the book for this nonsense.
Right. This is a nonfiction.
Yes.
Have you read the Sarah Vowell, Wordy Shipmates?
No, I read the Presidential Assassins one, which was good.
Oh, Assassination Vacation.
Yeah,
that was
yeah.
excellent.
Yeah.
But so in the midst of, she'll tell an anecdote and then she'll pull out and tell her own anecdote about hanging out with her nephew. And you're like, well, no, that's you hanging out with your nephew and then you learning about history.
Yes.
So
yes.
Super fun. But Edmund Morris's narrator doesn't exist. Doesn't have a girlfriend named Gloria.
Right.
No reason to go into it.
No reason. And you're like, well, we're in this Reagan thing. What are you doing? Do you know what I mean? And it'll pull you up. And it's the kind of thing where he took a big swing.
Okay.
He took a big swing.
He took a big swing.
And it didn't work out. I hate to bash the guy because he's...
Right. Because what else did he write? Did he write other great ones?
Yes, he wrote these great Teddy Roosevelt books.
Okay.
And then he wrote, I think that's what he's mostly famous for.
Okay.
And then he kind of went, like, his next Teddy Roosevelt book about Teddy's later years, just a normal history book. Do you know what I mean?
Okay.
Well, he learned, like, he won't even discuss this Reagan thing because he was just... raked over the coals. And
it was just a bad couple of years.
And every reviewer was like, what? And just tore him a new one.
Oh my God.
So the poor guy.
That is hilarious,
Yeah.
though.
So I did read that, but there's also one by Richard Reeves writes these books where it's just the time when they're in office.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's the day one of them being sworn in.
Right.
And day one, and the end of, we'll see you later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's an interesting because I suppose there's different kinds of biographies.
Yes, absolutely.
It's the early years or
yeah, and the Teddy Roosevelt books, the early years are actually more interesting.
Yeah.
Than when you're getting into the president and it's tariffs and it's antitrust legislation.
Actually, I'm a little more interested in that than.
Well, there's some of the legalese can just wear you down.
Oh, I'm sure. And he's such a sickly kid, and he's like, I'm gonna see the world.
Yes, and him kind of out on the going out to Montana and him
and punching a bear in the face.
Yes, all that stuff is like pretty amazing.
Yeah,
and Teddy Roosevelt would read 4 pages a minute.
Wow.
So he was like, someone would come as a guest and go, oh, I got this book for you. And blah, blah. Oh, thanks. And they'd have dinner. And the next morning at breakfast, he'd go, I read that book last night. And blah, blah. And they'd be like, what? I gave you a 500-page book last night.
And half of it's in Greek.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Yeah. So it's stuff like that where you're like, okay, that's like
there's
a pretty brilliant
guy.
guy.
Yeah, there's a reason that guy's president.
Absolutely.
I mean, do you see that pattern?
Well, I do think that it's frustrating because there are some people who are great Americans.
Yeah.
But they don't, like Ike was a great American. And Herbert Hoover was a great American. They weren't great presidents, in my opinion. Do you know what I mean?
Okay.
But you can see why they goes like...
Why was... I don't know anything about Herbert Hoover. Why was he a great American? Well... And when was he president?
He was president right before FDR.
Okay. Oh, and he got blamed for everything.
He got blamed for the crash, which wasn't his fault, but he was also...
He was at bat.
Yes, he was at bat. And it was also that thing of he didn't know what to... Do you know what I mean?
He didn't have a plan.
He didn't have a plan. And it was like, well, let's just stick to this theory of economics. It's like, well, that's not working, But after World War I, he was put in charge by Wilson he had been a successful businessman and he had been a philanthropist, and he was in charge of feeding the people in Europe. So you have all these refugees.
After World War I.
After World War I, it's been ravaged or whatever. And he did an amazing job feeding these people and taking, he saved millions of lives and whatever. So.
Well, that's fascinating.
Yeah. So you could see why they go, let's get this guy, he was a cabinet member for Coolidge. And it was like, this was a guy who was a brilliant guy who's done good things and.
Right.
Whatever.
He just couldn't respond to the Great Depression.
And, had he been president from 1920 to 1924, probably would have been pretty good. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
But being president from 1928 to 1932, it's like, ooh, you picked a bad time.
Right. Right. That's not going to work out for you. And now what about Ike? Why?
Well, Ike, I think I
just know that he was a general in World War II, right?
Yes, he was a great general, and I think he was also like Patton was like this maniac.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Oh, right. He was the guy who constantly.
Yeah, he was
the Roosevelt of generals.
Yes. And he was like, you just picture a football coach and he's like, you're like, oh, this guy needs to calm down a little bit, And then you had Montgomery, who was the British commander, who was also just a huge egomaniac. And blah, blah, blah. So Ike was a reasonable person. Do you know what I mean? He wasn't a
voice
psycho.
Of reason?
He was a voice of reason, and he was very diplomatic, and he had to deal with the British and their egos, and he had to deal with the Americans and Patton and kind of deal with these difficult personalities. So he was able to talk to the president, manage these difficult personalities, and also deal with the Russians and whatever. So I think he was an excellent general.
He's just really good with military things.
And I think if you knew him, absolutely. I think he was an amiable guy. He was, I think he was,
very sincere and
very sincere, absolutely, and a salt of the earth American type guy.
Okay.
I think
his presidency was what, 52 to
52 to 60.
60? Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, really 53 to 61 if you want to do it that way. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
but you know what I mean.
Election years. Yeah.
Yeah. So he got elected in 52, and then it ended after, with JFK. But it was one of these things where, like with segregation, it comes up.
Yeah.
And he's an older guy, so he's kind of like, "What's the problem?" Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Why do we want desegregation?
Yes, and he's
it's been working for 100 years.
Absolutely, and people are like, "Hey, we need to do this," and he's like, a lot of these guys, they don't want their daughters around these big sweaty Negro boys.
Yeah.
Like, you understand that?
No.
Yes.
Out loud.
Yes.
Out loud.
Yes, and it's like you just cringe, but it's sort of like if your grandparent says something racist, you kind of you cringe.
Right. To some extent, all you can do is wait for them to die.
Well, you just go, okay, that's the old world way of thinking of it.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? And I'm sure we have ways of thinking that people now are going to go years later.
The 8-year-olds are like, I don't understand how you can even understand that type of attitude.
We might have something
opinion.
that they go, what did they did this? Or whatever it is.
Right.
I don't know what
like
it'll be.
any sort of hitting or using the word shut up or stupid.
Yes. Whatever. There could be a million things.
Right.
You know what I mean? And you and I have seen comedy change even in the last 20 years, whatever.
My greatest thing that I don't enjoy? The adult sippy cup. Anyway, but
it's true. Even like the coffee sippy cup.
Yeah.
I don't like that either.
I'm an adult. I'm going to spill it on myself probably because I am not a gazelle. But it feels like it's the dumbing down of absolutely everything. And I'm like, okay, I get it. We're on the move.
Yes.
But it does feel like I'm a baby.
Yes.
So I don't like it.
There are a lot of little things like that absolutely bother me.
So JFK, he's the dreamiest of all the dreamy. Was there anyone dreamier than him?
Well,
presidentially?
I wouldn't. I mean, supposedly Franklin Pierce was a handsome fellow, from what I'm told.
That's right. He had that haircut.
But I think also, here you have JFK, who's this very handsome guy, and then you have power with all this power. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
And
the best looking guy in 100 years.
Right. And the most powerful, even an ugly guy who's super powerful. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you add that to, you go, wait, he doesn't even need help. Do you know what I mean?
That guy doesn't. Yeah.
Yes. It's like you go, wait, Tom Brady, what do you mean? Wait a minute. You're the best quarterback in the world. You don't need to be.
Right.
You're going to do just fine with the ladies. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. Nobody needs to hand you.
Yeah. So
tokens.
This isn't fair. So, like Ben Roethlisberger, you go, okay, he's an ugly guy.
Who's that guy?
He's the quarterback for the Steelers.
Oh, fair enough.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's like, okay.
Let's get him a date.
Give him some skill. Yeah,
okay.
Exactly. Where
that's the polite way of putting it.
Let's
get him a date.
Yeah, exactly. Where you go, you look at JFK and you're like, holy cow. It's like,
right. And he was killed like pretty quick into his presidency. So he got to have a dream, and then he got to have other people fulfill it. But there's plenty of biographies about him, right?
There are, but it's interesting. It's very hard to find an objective biography of JFK.
Oh, really?
Yes, it's either somebody who is madly in love with him.
Yes.
They're a liberal Democrat, and they're like. And then he came in the room and our hearts were aflutter. And you're like, really? It's that kind of thing. Or it's some Republican like, this is a myth and let's tear him down and whatever,
okay.
And I remember reading one book with like a hatchet job on JFK.
Okay.
And it was talking about, he did this and he won this primary. He used his money and his charisma, and Humphrey didn't have a chance. It's like, his charisma is part of being a leader. Do you know what I mean? You shouldn't be criticized. How dare that guy use his charisma?
That's what he has in his purse.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, that's one of his coins.
Absolutely. If a comic goes something, that guy's using his charisma. It's like, yeah, he's got stage presence. How dare he?
Yeah, he gets to milk the goodwill of the audience.
Yes,
but it'd be nice if he also writes some jokes.
Yeah.
So did the guy say that because he didn't agree with his politics. He
yes.
was like, all that guy's got is stage presence.
Well, I think that there are those biographies. So it's very hard to find one that's.
It would be nice to find something more even-handed where
yes.
you're just like, yes, his father or grandfather made his money in the Depression. Didn't he make his money in Prohibition or something?
Well, he made it prior to that. He actually was clever in that. Well, he did make it with Prohibition, and he made it in the movies and business, and he had different things. But about a week before the stock market crash, he's like, "This is acting funny." and he took his money out of it.
Oh, really?
Yes. And all these other people that were ruined,
yeah,
he still had his millions, and these other people, everyone got ruined, and it was like, whoo, that was close. I pulled my money out.
Yeah.
So he kind of smartly.
But wasn't he one of the reasons why it did crash then?
Well,
by economic policy wise, it's like I think it crashed because people pulled the money out, didn't it?
Well, I think eventually, but I think I don't think he had,
No, I mean he didn't do it purposely.
Yes,
it wasn't
yes.
like, you know what? I think I'm going to ruin people.
Well, yeah, I don't know that was responsible, but I do think he was savvy enough to get
sense that there was trouble.
Yeah,
and he's like,
yeah.
let's just cut our losses and call it a day. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting. Do you, so there's LBJ.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's what I was just going to say. I just do think it's very, like, you can find a biography of John Adams or Jefferson or Andrew, whatever, that's even handed. It's very hard to find one on JFK that somebody doesn't have an agenda one way or the other.
How about Lincoln? Same?
Yeah.
I feel like some of the guys that were assassinated.
Lincoln.
Canonized.
Yes. And Lincoln, he is pretty much the real deal. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
He's a guy that I don't think 100 years from now people are going to go, oh, whereas, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
there's going to be very little revisionist history of Lincoln.
I do think 100 years from now they might go, we might not have Andrew Jackson on the 20. But I think we'll still have Abe on the 5. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, all right.
Like, I don't think that he would be like that.
Yeah. Well, the thing about the only bad thing I ever heard about Lincoln, and I don't know if it's true. I haven't read. I think I read Gore Vidal's.
Oh, okay.
Lincoln. I think I read that, and I read Burr, and but was that Lincoln got a telegram from the army out in the Pioneer in the front essentially, where they were having trouble with the Native Americans. And Lincoln supposedly sent a telegram that said, I don't have time for this. We're in a civil war. Just kill them. And very possible. I mean, I think about some of the leaders of where you become president, like Obama. He said he was going to close Gitmo.
Right.
The man has not closed Gitmo. I'm not happy about it. And then someone was just saying that 15 people that they did release are now working for Al Qaeda and ISIS, or they're now. And I was like, gee, I wonder why 10 years of torture.
Right.
They, if they weren't terrorists before, if they weren't enemies of the United States previously, they are now. Well,
if they would start doing open mics, say once or twice a week,
oh my God,
that place would close very quickly.
It's like, oh, we're using all your napkins. And but it's interesting though that because the things you promise before you become president, and the things that I think sometimes you get in there and go, oh, I see why this is this way, which I didn't think before. I didn't have the information.
Right. I think sometimes there's that, and I think sometimes the pressure is so overwhelming that they're like, oh, you know what? If I do this, I'm just going to get hammered from the other. I'll be
right.
So
I won't be able to do
whatever.
anything else.
Yeah.
And I think those are two valid points. It's interesting.
I'm not saying that they shouldn't quote. You know what I mean? I do think that I think sometimes people get in there, but they don't have enough political capital, so to speak, to do some of the things they want to do. Like
Carter, so Carter goes in and he's like the first.
Here's a trivia question.
Yeah.
Okay. Why? Well, it's interesting. Carter saw a UFO. Did you know that?
I did hear.
There are two presidents who saw UFOs.
Yeah.
And if Carter's one of them, and if you just tell people, oh, Jimmy Carter saw a UFO, people are like, oh, Carter, he's out of his, you know what I mean? Whatever. But Reagan also saw a UFO.
Well, did they both claim that they were not just unidentified flying objects, but spaceships?
Well, it was one of these things like Reagan had this plane and all of a sudden there was this ship behind them. And then it changed colors and it went off at a speed that was like,
greater than.
Yeah. And it was like it was unexplainable. Oh. Yeah. And the same thing with Carter, it's so interesting. Yeah.
Oh, that is interesting.
Yeah.
Well, and of course, it's interesting that, nobody, like Ike didn't see it.
Yes, and that's true. That's true.
It's not like Ike wasn't flying around also.
Yeah,
so, true. Interesting.
Yes, I think that was interesting. My favorite Carter story was, so he's running for re-election in 1980, and he's giving his speech at the Democratic convention. Do you know do you know the story?
No, I don't know the story.
So, and you can actually see it on YouTube because I remembered it as a kid, and then I looked it up on YouTube, and there it
was.
So he's giving a speech, and he's saying the Democratic Party, you know, I'm paraphrasing, but it's been a party of great leaders, you know, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. The crowd goes crazy. Harry S. Truman. John F. Kennedy. Lyndon Baines Johnson. And a man who would have been a great president, Hubert Horatio Hornblower.
No.
Yes. He accidentally says Hornblower instead of Humphrey. Because there was a movie called Horatio Hornblower.
That came out in 1980?
No, it was an old movie with Gregory Peck.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, because of the books.
Yes. So it was just a Freudian slip.
Right. He just a
yes.
sort of a brain.
But here, absolutely. Of all moments, here he is. Do you know what I mean? And then you can see him go, you see him cringe. And then you see him go,
buddy.
Humphrey. But people are already cheering because they kind of already
I wish there's always a moment where you just like wish people had more stand-up training.
Yes. You know, it was absolutely. And it was one of these things you have to go on YouTube and see it.
Yeah.
It's so funny. And my brother and I always wanted to say, we always want him to just pick up his briefcase and just put his papers in it and close it up and just walk off and never be heard from again. Whatever happened to President Carter? Well,
he stopped running this one night.
He made a terrible Freudian slip
Instead of saying Daniel Boone, he said Dan Frontier. And so, oh my God.
It's so hilarious.
That's brutal.
Yes.
Brutal.
It's so great.
I was just working with Brian Regan, and he said that Brian Williams had missed out on and he said, didn't anybody else expect at SNL that he would be doing a thing with Weekend Update? Just as a man on the street kind of Narnia thing. He's just like, hey, I'm reporting to you from Narnia and, or anything, you know, and I was like, oh my God, the greatest, that would have been the perfect response to, I have no idea why he would have elaborated his own story, except for maybe much like, who was it FDR who never joined the service and
talking about LBJ exaggerating
LBJ, that's it.
Yeah.
FDR had polio.
Yeah.
I'll be over here. Okay. Yeah, LBJ. Yeah, are there any great FDR? The biographies of FDR must be a legion, right?
Yes, they are. And I think that I love the Doris Kearns Goodwin one is very, very good. Like
her name keeps coming up.
She's great. She's great.
How many has she done? Like a half a dozen presidents? Or?
She did.
How long does it take to write a presidential biography?
Well, that's a good question because that guy Robert Caro, who's doing the ones on LBJ, he's finally just become president, and he's written, I think, 4 now.
Oh wow!
Yeah, so it's like it is something like rough estimate 2,300 pages
of these 4 books.
Yes, and he just became president. Like it's not even his presidency.
Wow, and he has 3 terms. It's 12.
Oh no, I'm talking about LBJ for the Caro thing. But
it's too many initials. My
I'm sorry.
Fried.
No, I'm sorry. I jumped subject.
Oh, yeah.
But so she wrote a great FDR one. She had been, I guess, she had worked at the White House in the 60s when LBJ was there.
Okay.
Was she like an intern or something?
Right.
But then she wrote, and her husband was the one who coined the term the Great Society. He used to write speeches for LBJ.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
And her book was interesting because like LBJ would do these things where, you know, there's a White House pool. So he'd be like.
Swimming pool?
Swimming pool.
Okay.
So they'd be like having a meeting about, let's get on and take a swim. And if the guy didn't skinny dip, he would humiliate him until do you know what I mean? Yes. And LBJ was.
Take your pants off.
Yes.
What?
Yes. And LBJ apparently had a huge penis.
Oh.
Yes.
Well, that's why he wanted it.
That's why he wanted. And he would call his penis Jumbo. So like as a younger man, like he'd be like, you know, a young guy.
These are not the greatest stories.
Going to a party and he'd be like, who's Jumbo gonna fuck tonight? Like he'd say stuff like that.
Right.
So you're like, whoa. So he would skinny dip and humiliate the other guys until he would have to go to the bathroom, and he would go in the bathroom and he'd be on the toilet and he'd call the guy in to continue the meeting.
Oh.
And the guy would be like, you're taking a dump here.
Yeah.
I don't want, you know what I mean?
I don't want to be party to.
Yeah. And he would be, in there continuing the meeting, their discussion or whatever. Like he would it's you, and you're reading that stuff. You're like, oh my God,
wow.
You know, like the president is you know what I mean?
Yeah, he's 4 years old.
Yes, it's kind of
yeah. That's
so stuff like that. I'm sort of fascinated by.
Yeah. So what makes a person like that, a guy like LBJ or Nixon, want to do any good at all? You know?
Well, it's funny. I do. Yeah, that's a good point. I think that I think some of it is, if you grow up that you think you're so insecure, you think that you're right all the time.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I'm right. I'm right. So I've got, let's do that. And even if I cheat to win, it's for a better cause.
Because I'm the clear.
Yes. I mean,
I should
it's
be the
interesting.
leader.
Like when LBJ kind of stole the Senate, he cheated and yes. Stuffed the ballot box, did all this stuff. Because it had happened to him earlier in his career. He lost by 87, or he lost by a certain amount of votes where the other guy stuffed the ballot box.
Oh, okay.
So he cheated against this guy, Coke Stevenson. Now, Coke Stevenson was a very upstanding citizen.
Right.
Right. Segregationalist.
Ah.
So LBJ, underhanded.
Justified.
All that. So it was that justified of, I'm on the side of right. So.
And plus, this happened to me already, so
yes,
neither.
It's my turn. Yes, exactly. Exactly. And so I think in his mind, it was okay that I cheated. And there's a famous story. They would pay these Mexicans to go. They came over the border and they would go and vote.
Okay.
They were immigrants, like $5.
Okay.
And some of them would vote multiple times and then get, whatever.
Right.
But he would also do a thing of they needed the names for the voting rolls. They would go to the cemeteries. And they would write names off of the tombstones.
Wow.
And so these dead people are voting. And there's a story of him is with his assistant, and the guy's writing down the names. Mm-hmm. And there's one tombstone that's covered in moss, and he can't read it.
Yeah.
He just walks away. He goes, "You get back here." He's got as much right to vote as everyone here in the cemetery.
That is a great story.
It's probably a apocryphal story, but it's yes.
I'll take it. I'll take it as there's things my dad hasn't said that's like, no, you can tell him I said that. That's a good line. And so that's hilarious.
That's, at least in the spirit of LBJ. Yeah.
Right. So, what about Ford? Ford was in for a heartbeat.
He was in for a heartbeat. My favorite Ford story, and I saw this on the History Channel.
Okay.
Squeaky Fromme, or Squeaky Fromme, or whatever,
right,
was part of the Manson family.
Yeah.
And she wanted to kill the president to draw attention to the California redwoods. That was her rationale.
That is a sentence and a half.
Yes.
Yes.
She's like,
Of course she did.
Of course, I don't want anything to happen to these redwoods, so let me kill the president.
Right.
Makes perfect sense.
That's who controls the redwoods.
Right. Okay. So he's at some event. It's an outdoor thing, and people are gathered to meet the president, and he's shaking hands, and it's just a crowd of people around him, whatever. And she's got this bright red dress on with this red hair, and she's moving closer to him. And he sees her. And so in this interview on the History Channel, they're cutting back and forth between Gerald Ford and Squeaky Fromme. And they're each telling the story of that day. It's unbelievable. So he sees her. He can't help but notice her.
Right.
But she's getting closer, and he's shaking hands. And she moves up, and she's this far away, as far as you and I are.
Right.
I guess people at home can't see that.
Right.
But so he says, and I look down, instead of a hand, I see a gun. And she's got a gun in his stomach. And the Secret Service agents
start piling on her.
So she tells her, she goes, and everybody starts jumping on me and grabbing me. And I'm like, hey, take it easy. It's like, really? Take it easy.
Take it easy.
You're trying to murder the president.
Yes.
And somehow, apparently they're overreacting.
Yes.
What is their problem?
Exactly. Hey, you're pushing. Just grab the gun. Yes. Why?
I had happened to, this is the days of VHS tapes.
Okay. What's that?
I know, this is like 20 years ago. And I happened to have it on tape, and I watched the VHS of this History Channel thing. Yeah. So my wife and I are dying. It's like, what, are you kidding me? So I brought it into work, and I showed it, and like Conan and Andy, like everyone's on the floor.
And you're right there. It's like, what the hell?
And it's so great. I don't know if you can. So there is footage of that.
Yeah, there's got to be it's got to be on YouTube. Maybe.
Yes,
that would be hilarious.
It's so those are my things that I can't get enough of.
Right, and so are there George W. Bush biographies that you've read or not yet?
You know what? I haven't read those. I like to get some distance. So
fair enough.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, because then the perspective is kind of better. It's more of it's a long shot.
And some things that seem like a terrible idea sometimes turn out to be a great idea, and some things that turn out to be a great idea or a great plan. Do you know what I mean?
I cannot wait to find out how Bush's reaction to 9/11 is not a bad idea.
Well, yeah.
I guess we'll just have to wait and see.
But
it could be.
I don't know of any. I mean, I don't know of any. I couldn't name one of a biography.
Well, it could be like a Hoover kind of situation too, where he didn't know how to respond.
Yeah.
And
sure.
I mean, it's kind of larger than all of us.
Yes, absolutely.
And FDR did have 4 years. He had 4 years to plan and to think of how to respond to this.
Yes, that's
Great
true
Depression.
too. And even FDR was at least sort of more thinking on his feet of, well, let's try this, and that didn't work. All right, let's try this. I mean, but he at least sort of had a flexible approach,
right?
Where Hoover was kind of like, well, we're just going to wait this out. This
is what the economist told me to do.
Yeah, and we kind of, if you guys will just be patient, and it's like, well, we can't be patient because
people are dying. Right. It's, that pile of presidents at the end of the 1800s. Mm-hmm. I get them all mixed up.
Yes. It's a bad group. Yeah.
It's a bad group. A group of just sort of, they're all in the pockets of the industrialists and.
Yes. And also there's a lot of back row. It's like, it's interesting. It seems like it's a lot of people decide, like the backroom guys, the machines putting their guy in front.
Right.
So I think there's going to be corruption. I think it's actually been better when the people have actually
elected
the guy. You know what I mean? As opposed to a few party bosses going, okay, this is going to be our guy, and he's going to take care of everybody and all that stuff.
Yeah, even if it's just by charisma and haircut. Like you're voting for some haircut. You're like, all right, that's fine.
Yeah, I think that's true. And my favorite is McKinley's wife.
Yeah.
I guess she was an epileptic.
Okay.
So they would be doing it, whatever, and she would have a seizure, and she would shake and start to drool, whatever. He would remove his handkerchief.
Right.
And place it over her head and continue talking to whoever he was talking to. And just
to give her dignity.
Yes, exactly. So,
or that's what he thought he was doing.
Exactly. And you just go, wait a minute.
Keep eating.
What? Yes, and keep conversing with the guy next to him or whatever. And that was something that happened fairly frequent, whatever.
Sure. My brother has epilepsy. He used to have seizures all the time.
And you would just cover him up. And then.
We used to stop eating.
Really?
We used to kind of grab him, somebody get a spoon, stick it in his mouth.
You were actually concerned.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Right. It was like, I remember my sister yelling, get a pillow.
So there was some type of empathy.
Right. Well, there was a reaction to an action.
Right.
It wasn't
See,
just.
That's an interesting approach.
Right. We didn't just wait for him to bite his tongue off.
Yes. And you didn't just cover him up and go, let's not embarrass the family.
Right. Could you pass the peas?
Yes.
Yes. That would have been.
Once again, that's the kind of thing when I read that, I'm on the floor.
That's awesome. Brian, do you have any anecdotes you didn't get to tell? Because we're at an hour and I want to tell people about you again.
Sure.
This is Brian Kiley, by the way, at Kiley Noodles. BrianKiley.com.
Let me tell you a couple quick Nixon ones.
Okay.
There's always,
Nixon's the best.
Nixon is the best. He's so great. And there's one, he moves into this townhouse in New York. This is after he lost his 60 election.
Okay.
He moves in this townhouse. And Arthur Schlesinger happens to live next door.
Who's that?
He's one of JFK's advisors.
Okay.
Super liberal Democrat guy. Mm-hmm. Next door, he's like, oh, Nixon moved next door to me, whatever. So one day, in the old days, the young people, there were those people who used those reflectors. Do you remember those they had to get some sun?
They would wear
those silver.
For tanning.
Yes, for tanning they would use those. So people would sit out in the sun with this silver cardboard thing.
Right, to get even more
skin
sun,
cancer.
Yes.
I mean sun. And it would be, so that was a way people would get a tan or whatever. So Schlesinger looks out his window and there's Nixon in his backyard with one of those.
Yep.
Wearing black suit, white shirt, black tie, shoes. It's like,
only frying his head.
Yes, but this is Nixon relaxing. Do you know what I mean? like that's the kind of guy that Nixon. It's like, what are you doing? It's so great. But he
full suit.
So after he's president, this woman came on the Conan show who was his assistant.
Okay.
Later in life. So here he is. One of the things that's interesting, like he prided himself. He only watched on TV. He didn't watch TV. He only watched sports.
Okay.
He's a big football fan, and actually he liked baseball too. He would watch sports and he would watch the news.
Okay.
So one time she shows up for work early. He's watching the Dick Van Dyke Show. So she doesn't know. She's out in the hall and she doesn't know. So he's sitting there watching the Dick Van Dyke Show and he's splitting a gut and she's kind of chuckling to himself like, anyway. But also while she's there one time, because, Nixon didn't answer his own phone for years.
Right.
You're the president, you're whatever, you got somebody doing this stuff. So the phone rings and he answers it and he's puzzled and then he gets up and goes, that was strange. Someone was calling for Ed from Taco Bell. And I love that someone has a wrong number. They call Ed from Taco Bell, and they get Nixon.
Those are two weird stories.
So weird.
That's crazy. I read, when Nixon died, in Rolling Stone, Hunter S. Thompson wrote an essay. Mm-hmm. And he said that he one time was golfing, and Nixon was golfing on the same course, and they were like sort of at parties next to each other. And he sees Nixon, and he yells at Nixon, "I hate you." And Nixon yells back, "My wife doesn't like you either." Which I thought was a great
line.
Yeah.
And it's funny, they had actually met before because when he was covering the campaign, I guess in 72, Hunter S. Thompson was, Nixon wanted, do you know the story? Nixon wanted to talk football.
Oh, okay.
He wanted to talk football with somebody.
Yeah.
So they asked this pool of reporters, and none of his aides knew anything about football or whatever.
Weird.
So they asked, is there anybody here who's like a big football fan?
Yeah.
So Hunter S. Thompson is, I am. They go, okay, we'll let you talk to the president, just the two of you.
Right.
But you can only talk football. You can't ask him about anything else or whatever. So that's the agreement.
Wow.
So he goes, okay. So they put him in the back of the limo. He's in the back of the presidential, and Linnaeus is the president at the time. They put him in the back seat of the presidential limo. It's him and Nixon, and they just talk football for a half an hour.
Right.
And it's like, okay, that's it.
Wow.
And Hunter S. Thompson was impressed with Nixon's knowledge. Like, he was
presidential play date.
Yes.
So weird.
Yes, absolutely. So I find stories like that fascinating.
Those are, because they don't, it feels like so inhuman, right? Like whenever you hear about Obama playing basketball with people, or you're like, oh, I suppose that takes a lot of organizing to get him to be able to sit down and have a beer and maybe play some basketball.
Yeah, that's true. You need several moms involved for that play.
Regan's doing this funny joke about how he wouldn't want to be president. He said, could you imagine being awakened every day with problems? Problems. Just touching your shoulder. Hi, everything's on fire. Problems. And it's such a great bit.
That's hilarious.
It's much longer than that, obviously, but go see Brian Regan. Anyway,
yes.
Brian Kiley, where are you doing stand-up comedy? When you're not writing for Conan, you do stand-up, right?
I do.
All the time.
I do. I do it frequently.
You just did Letterman, didn't you?
I did.
About a year ago?
Mm-hmm. It was actually, just a couple weeks ago.
That's awesome.
I was on January 30th.
January 30th, you did Letterman? Mm-hmm. That was how many times now?
7.
Congratulations.
Thanks. And actually, they reran it last week, which is nice.
That is nice. Oh, you get a little bump?
You get a little bump.
That's
so I'm
nice.
excited about that, yeah. So I work at the Hermosa Beach Comedy Magic a lot. And,
there you go.
I work at Flappers. And
you don't do the road because you have kids and you have the gig.
I have a gig, so it's hard. I can do the road very little, so which is fine with me.
Which is fine because then you still get to go up and
I'm actually going to do Hilarities in Cleveland in April.
That's an excellent choice.
Well, my son is going to college nearby.
Oh, there you go.
So I'm just going to see him.
Fair enough.
and do the gigs at night, and then I'm going to go do his baseball games during the day. So.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, that's it's at Kiley Noodles, Rangers of the Dork Forest. Follow him on Twitter, for he is dry and hilarious, and he is dark and hilarious. And I enjoy it a fair amount. So BrianKiley.com. You've been listening to the Dork Forest. Thank you so much for doing the show.
Thanks for having me.
Take care out there.
My hat, my hat, my hat. They're dancing around my hat, my hat, my hat, my hat. Well, what do you think of that? If it looks like a Mexican hat dance and it sounds like a Mexican hat dance, it's most likely a Mexican hat dance. So take off your hat and let's dance.
Yay! Oh my God. Why don't we just call that as the end of the show?